Mm.
All right. Are we recording? I think so.
Yeah, it said so.
All right. Stefan Hartman here, Iron Direct Primary Care with my favorite person, the Fed Up Pharmacist. That's
No
your
one knows no one knows my real name. I'm a mystery.
that's your screen name on Instagram, the Fed Up Pharmacist.
Yeah,
It's great. I like that account. It's great. So we have our pharmacy specialist here. You work in hospital medicine, right?
I do.
All right. So you're used to seeing kind of the sickest of the sick that go into the hospital.
Absolutely.
Uh, Today, I think we should start out with your pharmacist perspective and maybe personal experience on birth control and what you think about that, what you went through, and tell us a little bit about your thoughts on that and what happened.
Sure, you and I have talked about this a little bit, previously. Birth control probably is one of my top three least favorite oral contraceptives. I should be more specific. Oral contraceptives are probably one of my top three least favorite classes of medication. So proton pump inhibitors, maybe coming in second, birth control being the first. Uh, so yeah, I was put on birth control at age 15 because I had acne and heavy menstrual cycles. Okay. No one was in the business back then of trying to figure out what the reasoning behind any of that was, what the root cause was. So I was given oral contraceptives and antibiotic to take daily to help with my acne. So fast forward, I'm on birth control at age 15. I go to pharmacy school and I start thinking at this point in time, like, man, I've been on birth control at this point for 10 years. And I start asking my professors, we're learning about medications in school. I start asking my professors, is there any reason like we shouldn't be on this long term? And the answer is no. They say, no, you're totally fine. The only reasons to go off of birth control are what? If you're like older, so women who are like in their 50s, who sometimes we still see on oral contraceptives. Mm. And if you're a smoker, that puts you at high risk of blood clots. But everybody else, totally fine, no issues whatsoever. I'm about 32 at the point that I decide to go off of my birth control, because around that time I started dabbling in functional medicine. That's also around the same time I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's and realized that the oral contraceptive probably was a contributing factor. Mm-hmm. My entire adult life, I had been plagued with anxiety, luckily not depression, but a lot of anxiety. Of course, now I know stemming probably from that oral contraceptive use. So what we know about birth control pills is that they deplete essential nutrients. So from a pharmacist perspective, all of our B vitamins, magnesium, they also mess with your gut flora, that's the drug interaction between, we always counsel patients, if you get a prescription for antibiotics while you're on birth control, that it can decrease the efficacy of the birth control. Well, why is that? Because that's the impact on the gut flora, because that's how birth control pills are metabolized. You have a whole set of bacteria in your gut. It's called the estrobolome. So those little bacteria are responsible for metabolizing your estrogens and things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so that contribution of that medication to autoimmunity, to anxiety, to depression, to all these chronic issues that we're seeing in young women, we can't keep ignoring that. Mm-hmm. And it's given out like literal candy.
It is. It was never designed to like control acne, right? And so that's
so that's the thing. So, I'm not here to harp on the use of birth control for contraception, right? So like short-term contraception. But when we're using it off-label for heavy menstrual cycles, for acne, for, whatever else we use it for, PCOS, we've got an issue. And we're giving it to young women and they're taking it for decades.
Yeah. And, if you believe that it's perfectly safe and doesn't cause problems, then you would be fine with an off-label prescription. But as we know, there are some real issues and risks with it, not to mention pulmonary embolism, risk for blood clots. In my opinion, before putting any woman on a birth control pill, you should screen them for factor V Leiden deficiency at the very least, right?
Yes.
That's a
I
real
mean, how many I've seen probably a handful of patients who would have, have an embolic event that would be attributed to birth control.
yeah. The other huge thing that I'm really concerned about is when I test women who are on the birth control, and I test their blood work, I see their hormones are all off, right? I see suppression of testosterone, I see suppression of progesterone, I see suppression of estrogen. And the conventional thinking is that these are hormones. If you take the birth control, it's a hormone that's given back to your body. But if I run the blood work, I don't see it. So what's going on here?
Right. So I mean, you're essentially shutting everything down. Like you're shutting that HPA axis, you're shutting that HPG, I guess it's your gonads, HPG axis completely down. And so it's the irony, right, that you go on birth control to prevent pregnancy, but as a result of that, you're shutting down the very hormones that drive your libido. So it's no wonder that people say, like, oh, I don't have any sex drive. Well, your testosterone's in the trash, like you're not ovulating. Yeah. Because it's this faux kind of, I guess it's a faux state of like pregnancy that we're inducing in people, right?
Like pregnancy, but also menopause at the same time.
Yes.
It's wacky.
What a horrible combination.
Like, what is going on here?
And then the thing we don't talk about too is, there's the discussion that, okay, well, all you have to do is just stop taking the pill. And this does work for some people. Like if you want to conceive, like just stop taking the pill, you'll get pregnant. Everything comes back online beautifully, but does it? So
not in my practice.
Not in my personal experience. So when I was 32, which is, I mean, fairly young, right? I went off of birth control and I was like, okay, let me test my hormones. So I did a Dutch test and literally I was in the tank on every hormone, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. I had nothing. I was like a menopausal. I was having hot flashes like a menopausal woman.
Wow.
And it never did. So I mean, and Sarah Hill, I've talked about this book. So Sarah Hill, This Is Your Brain on Birth Control, and she talks about that. Like, what are the long-term effects of if we start someone on birth control when their body is just developing essentially? So you're 15, 16 years old and you're shutting down communication, right, between your brain and your ovaries for years. What does that do?
Exactly. I mean, we wouldn't do it to men, right?
We would not do it to a man. We would never do this to men. No.
Like you would never prescribe testosterone replacement therapy to a 15-year-old boy. It never happened. You'd never do that, right? Because obviously that's ethically wrong. Okay. But we do it for women. What does testosterone replacement do? I should also say it shuts down your natural ability to produce hormones. What does birth control do? It shuts down your natural ability to produce hormones. So in my mind, it's the same thing. So if I wouldn't do it to a boy, would I do that to a girl? Ethically, no, I wouldn't do that.
Right. And so it's the same effect, right? So what do you counsel your patients on when you start them on TRT? What are the impacts of TRT on fertility?
Right. So there is the real risk that you can't produce children. I mean, I start TRT on guys, typically they're older, and so they're not worried about that anyway, right? They've had children. But if we're doing it on a younger guy and he hasn't had children, we have a serious discussion. We try other options first, right? We try to enhance FSH and LH rather than suppress it with exogenous hormone use.
Yeah, and so we have, and the ramifications too on all of us. All these, I think I listened to a podcast recently. Dave Asprey quoted a stat. I think he said, is it 85% of women at some point are on hormonal contraceptives? That sounds right. It's like it's a high number. We're urinating all of this into our water supply, and we're all drinking it unless we're filtering our water.
Yeah, getting fancy water like San Pellegrino.
Yeah. So that's another thing, with the low testosterone levels. I mean, what ages are you seeing? I'll kind of turn the table. So with low testosterone in men, like, Are you seeing it in younger and younger men?
Yeah, I'm starting to measure it in boys, 17-year-old boys, to see like where does this start? Because I keep seeing it go lower and lower. I'm like, okay, age 40, sure, you can have low testosterone there. Okay, what about age 30? Okay, what about age 25? And I see low testosterone, like we're talking total testosterone of 300, a free testosterone like 5, maybe 10 at the best. And it gets
Okay, and what are your functional medicine ranges? Like
oh,
what are,
like I'll take my levels, for example. My total testosterone has ranged between 860 and 960 total. And my free is anywhere between 16 and 20. I think that's pretty like bare minimum, if you ask me.
okay.
I think we should be a little bit even higher than that. I mean, maybe 16 free to maybe 30 free. I mean, this is probably what our grandfathers had before us. The guys who were on D-Day storming Normandy Beach, these guys had high testosterone, right? They had balls of steel, and we just don't have that anymore. And we're seeing it in our society, right? Weak men, scared men. It's not good.
No, I think about my grandfather. He's still living. He's 96 years old. A farm boy from Kentucky. I mean, think about this. Raised on a farm in Kentucky. Literally, his first exposure to anything, he joins the army and is sent on a ship across the Atlantic Ocean to Europe. The complete unknown. I mean, can you imagine, like these days, if someone was supposed to do that?
And interesting. So I will measure the older population too. And guys like that, old dudes, have better testosterone than guys in their 30s.
I'm not surprised.
It's crazy. I mean, I'll measure a 70-year-old and he'll have what I consider like a low normal reference range. He'll have a total of maybe 500, 600 and a free of about 10. And I'm like, hey, buddy, you're kind of low. We can put you on TRT. You're age 70. You're having some issues. But young guys, age 30, this is their normal. This is the new normal for guys age 30.
It makes you wonder, like, if we could go back in time and say men like my grandfather, what if we had been able to test his testosterone levels in like 1945?
They were, and like if you talk to some older doctors, as I do too, they say that they've seen the reference ranges of LabCorp and Quest. They've gone down with time.
Well, it's an average, right? It's a population average. That's how labs
a population average. So we are shrinking down and normalizing a weaker reference range because the population is getting weaker. So that's why I have my optimal reference ranges, and then we have the LabCorp reference ranges.
Yeah.
And crazy.
It's unreal. So what do you think what are the contributing factors, like in your opinion? Like what's the primary driver of this?
Yeah, as you said, the tap water, it has birth control in it. You go to the municipal cities and they can filter out feces, they can filter out some of the big things. They nuke it with they put it, first of all, they put it out into a lake and they let it sit there for a while so that the toxins fume off. And then they put it back into the system and they filter it again. They don't filter out pharmaceuticals. It would take a much more extensive process to filter out the pharmaceuticals. And so tap water, I think, is a decent source of estrogens, right? As you mentioned. But the other components we're exposed to are the fragrances. A lot of people are exposed to more fragrances, perfume, cologne, deodorants, your hair products, your shampoos that you're using. These are endocrine disruptors. They mess up your hormones. A lot of them have xenoestrogens in them too. They mimic estrogen in the body. And then don't even get me started on the plastics that are everywhere. Unfortunately, the plastics are in the ocean. They're in the fish that we eat. So that's scary.
It's almost unavoidable, the plastics. Yeah.
The plastics are in the plastic bottles that you're drinking. I drink out of a mason jar. I don't drink out of plastic. I drink out of glass. So I try to avoid that the best I can. And I don't use sunscreen. I think sunscreen is pretty toxic as well. So I avoid that completely. And
it's amazing when you change your diet. Seed oils, I would say, when you change your diet and you avoid seed oils and you start getting like really healthy fats. I mean, I'm not a fair person, but I'm part Irish. I mean, I'm white and I have blue eyes. Yeah. But I can go outside and not burn.
You don't burn. Yeah, I just get a nice.
I spent years
skin, and I haven't sunburned. I played 10 tennis tournaments this year in Florida, and I don't wear sunscreen. I wear a hat. I wear this shirt. I didn't sunburn once. 10-10 tournaments in Florida, right?
Yeah, on a
Out there,
court where you're
I'm
literally
playing
baking.
out in the middle of August. I'm playing out there for 2 to 3 hours. I don't get sunburned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything we're told, I think about like pharmacy school me when I was slathering myself in sunscreen and Bath and Body Works and using Gain detergent and taking my birth control pills. Like, no wonder autoimmunity resulted from that. Like, it should be no surprise.
No surprise there.
Yeah.
And you had the thyroid autoimmunity.
I do, yeah, Hashimoto's. Or had, because technically I'm in remission, but
Good. There you go.
so it's doable. People will tell you autoimmunity is not treatable, right? Like medicine tells us that you can't cure autoimmunity, but you can certainly heal.
I think you can. You just have to change a lot of things in your life, kind of unlearn what you thought was truth.
Right. And that's the most painful thing, especially for people like you and I who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on an education.
Yeah.
And it's painful to one day wake up and realize, everything I was told may not be true.
And most people will never wake up, maybe because they don't want to.
Life would be I tell people that all the time, like, my life would be so much easier if I still believed everything I was taught.
Oh my God. I would just be following the same stuff I learned in school, the protocols, the algorithms. It's
Evidence-based medicine, just check the boxes.
Check the box. It's brainless work, really. And AI could do it. And then AI will do it. We'll all be replaced by AIs at some point. Right.
Pharmacists are definitely headed down that path, especially like in the retail sector. I mean,
oh yeah.
There has to be a different way, but
yeah, we have to figure out alternative ways to continue to use our knowledge. Otherwise we'll just be relics of the AI industry.
But the AI doesn't care about your health, and so that's the difference.
Oh, I mean, the AI is just following evidence-based medicine.
The AI won't say, okay, well, your lab value is normal, but it's not optimal, right? It's just going to say.
Yeah. But that's what most clinicians out there are doing. They're just following algorithms and reference ranges, which in essence an AI could do better.
I see it every day in practice, where these people they're not well, but their labs are normal.
Yeah.
So we just patch them up and send them on until something big happens.
Right. And then they end up in the hospital and you have to try to save their life.
Right.
That's where medicine does do very well. We're very good when people are very sick at keeping them alive.
Oh yeah. Like today I had a full code. And so absolutely, if you're dying, that's the place to be. But for health is not the place to be.
Not the place to be.
You and I discussed that everything in the hospital is full of seed oils. Like, the food is horrible. We don't let patients have light. We don't let them have fresh air. Literally everything is stacked against you.
Yeah. And how healthy are people working in the hospital?
Not. So a friend of mine today, he is a police officer, and he messaged me his like PT results. Like, they have to, I guess, certify every year. I don't really know, but they have to meet certain standards to be on the police force. And I messaged him back and I was like, actually, I really wish that healthcare professionals had something like this. Now, do I need to be able to do 100 push-ups? No. Can I do 100 push-ups in a row? Also, no. But people in healthcare should be setting the example. And instead, so it's Christmas time in a hospital, which means there is food everywhere. So today, everywhere I went, the ER, the floor, everywhere I was at, there were just platters of chocolates and cookies and fudge. Okay, none of us need any. No one there needs any of that.
No, they don't need those extra calories. It's not like they're training twice a day and running a mile or two.
No. And they're just amazed. Like how do you just walk by this? like we're way past this point. Like I'm way past that at this point. I do not need mass produced chocolates or processed foods.
Yeah, no, it doesn't even seem appetizing when you're at our level. You don't even see it as food.
No, and it's funny, that those foods have such a hold on people. But I can remember that. I mean, can you remember? You may not because you're not American, you're European, so you probably never had this issue. But I mean, I can remember like just it's natural just to walk by and grab, like a treat off the tray. But then that sugar, you don't ever stop. That's the problem, is that people just don't stop.
Um, yeah.
It's addictive. It's like a rat with like cocaine, like give me more.
The rat will push on the sugar one just as much as the cocaine.
Yeah, that's a fascinating study.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hijacking all of our brains.
Sure is. Well, good. I think we covered a lot of ground here. I think people will find that pretty valuable. There's not enough talk about birth control and hormones. No one's talking about it out in the mainstream.
No, that's because, you know, as a female, how dare you not be a feminist and be pro birth control and pro freedom for women? But is it really? But is it really? So another part of my story is obviously I was put on birth control at 15. I didn't go off of it until I was 32. I did not true power as a female. I mean, our menstrual cycle it's another vital sign for females.
Yeah.
And not knowing what your cycle is, no one should not know what their natural cycle is until they're in their 30s. Like that should not be acceptable. And we should also be telling people that, oh, by the way, you can't get pregnant every single day of the month.
That's true. That's a known secret.
But apparently that's a big secret. People think that like you're just going to get pregnant at any point in time. Not so. I was not even taught that. I don't think in school. I don't think they even mentioned to us, despite all the anatomy and physiology classes I had. I don't know that I was ever taught about a female's menstrual cycle.
We were taught it in school, but we were said, oh, it's not as effective as IUD or something like that. It's like, oh, this is 98% effective and this is like 60% effective. That's okay.
Yeah. I mean, there are options out there, and that's what I think I would want. Like if I had a teenage daughter, and I could have a teenage daughter, I guess I'm old enough. That's what I would want them to know. Like there are options that will not be detrimental to your long-term health. Like
it's so cool. Like the female menstrual cycle, like at certain times of the month, you're be more metabolically active. So your temperature goes up. And that's the time when you should be supporting your body. You should be eating more carbohydrates to support that progesterone increase. Mm-hmm. And then when that drops off just quite suddenly, within over 2 days, you get this precipitous drop off of hormones. You have to understand, hey, maybe there's a reason that I don't feel so great. Maybe I'm more irritable, more anxious. And this is completely hormonal. And you should recognize that and support your body in those times.
Mm-hmm. And instead we have like our culture, it's just kind of like that boss babe culture, right? And it's fine. Like I'm all for women like going to school and pursuing careers and being successful, but at the same time honoring those natural rhythms of your body. And so there's certain times a month when, like you said, like you can push and you can go, and there's certain times a month when naturally you're going to be more restful and need more nutrition and need more support.
And it's, if my temperature dropped a full degree, I'd be shivering. I mean, I'd be so cold. But this happens naturally to a woman throughout her cycle. My fiance started wearing the Aura ring, and this is just put on a cool little graph for her to see. It's quite incredible what happens.
Yeah, if we would just honor that. But again, it's just I think we're so out of sync with nature. We talk about like circadian rhythms and how important that is, like light, but women have our own cycles, and so it's funny to talk to women who have started like pursuing health and wellness and realize that a lot of people cycle with the moon. It's like we're wild, like we're animals. We just don't We act like we're not, but really, how in tune are we supposed to be with nature?
We need to get a little bit better at bringing ourselves back closer to nature, and I think a lot of our health can improve.
Yes, I agree.
So they do. All right, very good. I think we'll put a pause there.